Whispering Mirror, Aftermath and Lingering Shadows. After Alice destroyed the mirror's core, she thought she was finally free. For the first time in months, her home felt lighter, no longer filled with whispers or shadows. Yet strange occurrences began almost immediately. She would occasionally see brief reflections of the souls she freed, faint, shimmering figures passing by windows or lingering in puddles on rainy days. They didn't seem hostile, but their presence left her uneasy. One night she woke to a chilling sight, dozens of ghostly figures standing silently at the foot of her bed. Among them was Mia, smiling faintly. "We're free, Alice," Mia whispered, "but freedom isn't the same as peace." The spirits explained that while they were no longer trapped in the mirror's torment, they were still tethered to the world, unable to cross into the afterlife. The destruction of the mirror had severed their connection to their prison, but it hadn't granted them true rest. Now they roamed aimlessly, seeking closure that seemed just out of reach. Alice tried to move on with her life, but the curse of the mirror lingered. One day, while cleaning, she found a shard of the mirror she had destroyed. Its surface shimmered, and when she touched it, a voice whispered, "You can't escape." Panicked, she threw it into a river, but the next morning it reappeared on her nightstand, glinting ominously. The shard seemed to have a will of its own. It would appear in unexpected places. Her purse, her car, even inside her refrigerator. Worse, whenever she tried to destroy it, she would experience terrifying visions. The shadowy halls of the mirror realm, the anguished faces of the trapped souls, and Elias Werner's distorted figure, laughing in the distance. Alice realized that the shard wasn't just a fragment of the mirror. It was its heart. The mirror wasn't truly destroyed. It had merely been scattered, its essence now tied to her. The spirits began appearing more frequently, begging Alice for help. They whispered stories of unfinished lives, unspoken words, and lost loved ones. One spirit, a young girl named Clara, followed Alice everywhere, crying softly and asking, "Can you find my mommy?" Another, a stern-looking man in a tattered suit, demanded vengeance against those who had wronged him in life. As the spirits grew more insistent, Alice started to lose touch with reality. Their emotions seeped into her own, overwhelming her with feelings of sorrow, anger, and regret. She realized the spirits weren't just seeking peace. They were drawn to the shard, which acted as a beacon for their unresolved pain. Determined to end the curse once and for all, Alice sought out a secretive group of mystics known as the Veil Keepers, who were rumored to specialize in severing ties between the physical and spiritual worlds. The Veil Keepers revealed that the mirror's power originated from a ritual involving Elias Werner's own soul. The mirror's heart, the shard, was a fragment of his corrupted essence. To destroy the shard and free the spirits, Alice would need to perform a dangerous ritual in the location where the mirror was first created, the ruins of Elias Werner's mansion. The ritual required her to confront not only Werner's spirit, but also the memories and traumas of every soul tied to the mirror. Alice traveled to the mansion ruins, which were now little more than crumbling stone walls overgrown with ivy. As she began the ritual, the shard in her pocket grew unbearably hot, and the air filled with agonized screams. Shadows coalesced around her, forming into the shapes of the spirits she had freed, along with others who had been lost in the mirror for centuries. At the center of it all stood Elias Werner, his form now monstrous and fragmented, with shards of the mirror embedded in his flesh. "You cannot destroy me," he growled, his voice echoing like shattered glass. "I am their pain. I am your pain." The spirits, including Mia, surrounded Alice, urging her to finish the ritual. "We can't move on if you fail," Mia said, tears streaming down her face. "But you can't fight him alone." In a desperate act, Alice allowed the spirits to merge with her, giving her the strength to confront Werner. She held the shard aloft, chanting the incantation provided by the Veil Keepers. Werner roared, his body splitting apart as the shard began to dissolve. The spirits cried out, their voices mingling in a harmonious chorus, and one by one they disappeared in flashes of light. When the ritual ended, Alice collapsed. The shard was gone, and the air felt still and quiet for the first time in months. The spirits had finally crossed over, and Werner's essence was obliterated. But Alice was forever changed. Her reflection in mirrors no longer looked quite like her. It was her face, but her eyes seemed older, and sometimes She swore she saw faint figures standing behind her. Though the curse was broken, she remained connected to the spirit world, able to see glimpses of those who lingered between realms. Alice dedicated her life to helping lost souls find peace, using her newfound connection as both a gift and a curse. But every now and then, when the light hit a reflective surface just right, she would see Werner's twisted grin, a reminder that some shadows never fully fade. The Eternal Passenger. Daniel had always wanted a vintage car, and when he found a pristine 1967 Mustang for sale at a bargain price, he couldn't resist. The car gleamed with a polished, cherry-red finish, its leather interior immaculately restored. The seller seemed eager to part with it, muttering only, "You'll need to take care of her." Excited, Daniel brought the car home and took it for a spin that night. As he drove along the quiet highway, he noticed the faint scent of roses wafting through the air. It wasn't unpleasant, but it struck him as odd since the car had no air freshener. He turned on the radio, but it only played static, no matter how much he fiddled with the knobs. Frustrated, he gave up and rolled down the windows, enjoying the cool night breeze. That's when he heard it, a soft voice, almost a whisper, coming from the back seat. "Are we almost there?" Startled, Daniel pulled over and looked behind him. The back seat was empty. Convincing himself it was just his imagination, he continued driving, but the strange occurrences didn't stop. Over the next few days, he noticed the scent of roses growing stronger, and every time he glanced in the rearview mirror, he thought he saw a shadowy figure in the back seat. One night, as he was parking the car in his driveway, the voice came again, clearer this time. "Please, I need to go home." Daniel spun around, but the back seat was as empty as before. This time, however, there was an icy handprint on the inside of the rear window. Determined to find answers, Daniel began researching the car's history. He discovered it once belonged to a young woman named Evelyn, who had died tragically in a car accident. Her body had never been found, and locals whispered that she had been trying to escape something, or someone, when the crash occurred. Evelyn's favorite perfume had been rose-scented, and the car had been salvaged and resold shortly after her disappearance. Stories about the car being haunted had followed it from owner to owner, but no one had ever kept it for long. Daniel decided to confront the entity directly. He drove the car to a secluded spot and spoke into the empty air. "Evelyn, if you're here, I want to help you. What do you need?" At first, there was silence. Then the radio crackled to life, playing a soft melody. The scent of roses became overpowering, and in the rearview mirror, Daniel saw her. A faint, ethereal figure in a white dress, her face pale and sad. "Take me home," she whispered. Evelyn guided him through winding back roads to a remote, overgrown path. The car's headlights illuminated a crumbling old house hidden in the trees. "This is where it happened," she said, her voice trembling. As Daniel explored the property, he discovered more than he bargained for. In the cellar of the abandoned house, he found a hidden room containing old restraints and disturbing journals. It became clear that Evelyn had been held captive there, but had managed to escape, only to meet her end in the crash while fleeing her tormentor. The air in the room grew cold, and Daniel heard Evelyn's voice again. "He's still here." Shadows moved in the corners, and Daniel felt an oppressive presence, as though he were being watched. He ran back to the car, but the engine wouldn't start. The shadow coalesced into a monstrous figure at the edge of the woods, its hollow eyes fixed on him. Evelyn's ghost appeared beside Daniel, her form glowing faintly. "He took everything from me," she said, her voice stronger now. "End this." She guided him to an old rusted key hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the cellar. With it, Daniel unlocked a small box in the room, revealing a locket with Evelyn's picture. The monstrous shadow howled in rage, its form dissolving into the night. As the first rays of dawn broke through the trees, Evelyn smiled at Daniel, her features soft and peaceful. "Thank you," she said before fading away. Daniel sold the car shortly after, unable to shake the memories of what had happened. But the scent of roses lingered in the interior, faint but unmistakable. The new owner claimed they sometimes felt a protective presence while driving, and that the radio would occasionally play Evelyn's favorite song, even when turned off. Daniel never looked back, but every time he passed an old Mustang on the road, he couldn't help but wonder if Evelyn was still out there, riding quietly in the back seat. The forgotten child, Emily and her husband Jack were thrilled to move into their dream house, a beautiful Victorian-style home nestled in the countryside. It was spacious, with high ceilings, intricate woodwork, and a sprawling garden perfect for their young son, Tommy. The house seemed perfect, except for the basement. The basement was dark and damp, with peeling wallpaper and an eerie chill that persisted even on sunny days. Emily noticed the strange coldness right away, but Jack dismissed it as part of living in an older home. Determined not to let it bother her, she focused on unpacking and settling in. A week after moving in, Emily overheard Tommy talking to someone in his room. She peeked in and saw him sitting alone, giggling and chatting animatedly. "Who are you talking to, sweetie?" Emily asked. "My friend," Tommy replied cheerfully. "Her name is Sarah. She lives here." Emily smiled, thinking it was just an imaginary friend. But Tommy's descriptions of Sarah grew unsettling. He described her as small, with old clothes and messy hair. He said Sarah didn't like being downstairs and that she cried a lot when she was alone. Emily brushed it off until strange things began happening. Toys would move on their own, doors would creak open, and the sound of soft crying echoed through the house late at night. Emily grew curious and began researching the house's history. She discovered that the home had belonged to a wealthy family in the 1920s. They had a young daughter, Sarah, who tragically died after falling down the basement stairs. Rumors suggested she had been locked in the basement as punishment, a common but cruel practice of the time. Emily's unease deepened when Tommy began refusing to enter the basement. One day, while doing laundry, she found the word "help" scratched faintly into the basement wall. Her stomach churned as she realized the scratches were fresh. That night, Tommy woke up screaming. Emily and Jack rushed to his room and found him trembling, clutching his blanket. "Sarah's mad," he sobbed. "She says we're going to leave her like everyone else." Emily decided to confront whatever was in the house. Armed with a flashlight, she ventured into the basement. As she descended, the air grew colder, and the faint sound of crying surrounded her. She called out softly, "Sarah, are you here?" The crying stopped abruptly, and the basement fell into an oppressive silence. Then a shadowy figure appeared in the corner, a small girl with hollow eyes and tangled hair. "Don't leave me," she whispered, her voice trembling with despair. Emily felt a pang of sorrow. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said gently. "What do you need?" The figure pointed to a loose floorboard. Beneath it, Emily found a small wooden box containing a faded photograph of a smiling little girl and a lock of hair. Sarah's spirit hovered close, her gaze fixed on the box. Emily realized this was her only connection to the world. The next day, Emily and Jack held a small ceremony in the garden. They buried the box beneath a blooming rose bush, saying a prayer for Sarah's peace. As they did, a warm breeze swept through the garden, and for the first time, the house felt lighter. Tommy reported that Sarah no longer came to play, but he often talked about a butterfly that visited his window, a beautiful white one that lingered as if watching over him. Months later, as Emily was tucking Tommy into bed, she noticed something on the dresser. The faded photograph of Sarah, perfectly intact despite having been buried. Beneath it was a single rose petal. Emily smiled, sensing that Sarah wasn't gone, but was finally at peace. The family stayed in the house, and though they never saw Sarah again, the home always carried a sense of warmth and comfort, as if it were being gently watched over by its smallest and most forgotten resident.